One of the most common questions I get asked for people thinking about moving to Moscow is, should I live in the center or should I live in the suburbs? And today, I'm going to answer that question. Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today I'm sat in the Park of Arts right by Gorky Park and right by the river Moskva right there. Today is a lovely spring day. You can hear lots of sounds of gardeners cutting the grass. You can hear sounds of families, kids, things like that. It's a really lovely day to be sat here having a little sunbathe in the middle of April. Today I'm sat here to talk to you about one of the most complicated topics for someone moving to Moscow. Where should you live? Moscow accommodation is a very complicated topic because there's so many options and it's such a big city, there's so many areas and styles of accommodation to choose from. However, if you're going to come and stay here for an extended period of time, too long to be staying in a hotel, then it's a really important thing. It should be one of your highest priorities for a comfortable and a happy life here in the capital of Russia. When we talk about Moscow and the sections of this city, we can crudely split it up into three separate regions. The first region, the center, is probably bordered by the third ring. Some people will say the garden ring is a circle around the center, but that's a much too small area and there's not that many places to live within there at an affordable price. So we'll start off by saying the center is inside the third ring. Secondly, it's the outside ring of Moscow called MKAD. Inside there we can call the suburbs of Moscow. And then after that you have the places in Moscow Oblast, Moscow region, which are more the exurbs of Moscow, as what Russian people would call the sleeping areas. So when I talk about this video, I'm going to be talking about the center compared to the rest of it, the suburbs and the exurbs. If we talk about expats here in Moscow, there are three places most of them live. The first place is of course the center within the third ring. The second place is up in the northwest of Moscow near the metro station Molodozhnaya, which is near where lots of people work. And the third area is just outside of Moscow in the international gated communities for people who would like to live in houses and quite expensive, rich, posh areas which normally have a very nice school attached to them. And it's good for families of wealthy people. So those are the three main areas. So in this video, I'm going to be focusing on the center of the city and the pros and cons of living in the center. If the pros heavily outweigh the cons for you, then I would recommend living here. If the cons outweigh the pros, then I would consider living further afield, maybe somewhere more quieter, more suitable for your style of life. So without further ado, let's get on with it. So let's talk about the pros, and I've outlined 5. The first one I'd like to talk about is just the wide range of things to do in the city. If you live in the center of the city, it's much easier to get to every single event. You can think about going to the Bolshoi to go watch ballet, or you want to go to a music concert in one of the many venues here in the city. Maybe you want to go to a nightclub. Maybe there's a street parade. Maybe it's Victory Day and you want to see the street parade. Maybe there's a market you'd like to go to, one of the cool hipstery markets in the center. Those are all in the center of the city and are much better accessed if you live in the center. For people who live outside the center and have to commute into the center every day for work, imagine what it's like to wake up on a Saturday or a Sunday on your day of rest and think, I need to travel 90 minutes into the center just to have some entertainment. If you want to go to a museum, most of them are in the center, like this one here, Tretyakovsky Gallery, one of the most famous in the whole city. If you want to go to really any major cultural event, it's going to be in the center. So that's the one massive pro of living here, just the easy access to almost all events of every variety, and that's one of the reasons I personally chose to live here in the center. The second benefit for me, the second pro, are the transport links. In Moscow, if you live in the center, there is always a metro station nearby, always a way to get somewhere on the underground lines without such a far walk. And in fact, many places have 2 or 3 metro stations nearby, and you have a choice of convenience based on how far the walk is, what line the station is on, and how easy it is to get to your destination. So that's one massive benefit. And it's not only the metro. The bus connections in the centre are great, the tram connections in the centre are great, and also if you decide you want to go somewhere else, a different city, all the major train stations in Moscow are right in the centre. So if you're travelling, say you want to go to St. Petersburg via train and you live in the suburbs or the exurbs of the city, you have to travel into the centre to get a train to go all the way to St. Petersburg. It's much more convenient to live in the centre in this way. There's only one downside really to living in the centre in terms of transport links, and that's getting to the airports. All the airports in Moscow are far from the centre, all 4 of them. So that means if you want to go abroad, you want to fly, it's going to be a bit of a trek. However, if you decide you want to live on the outskirts of the city, you're going to be close to 1 airport, maybe 2, but the other ones are going to be an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours away. So you have to carefully plan where you want to fly to, which airport to fly to and from, and maybe it's just not economically viable or it's not the correct choice for you. So transport links are much better in the center, and that's the second pro of living in the center of Moscow. The third pro of living here in the center is cleanliness. The mayor of Moscow, Sobyanin, has put a hell of a lot of taxpayers' money into keeping this city presentable. It's a very clean place to go for a walk. It's very, very pleasant. Everywhere you look in the centre is clean, and that's just not the story for outside the centre, which are pretty neglected in comparison. In fact, many places in the centre around, say, the area Lubyanka, many of the wide streets have been cut down to have big paths for people walking. It's very well maintained, very beautiful. There's flowers everywhere, there's benches everywhere. It's a very clean and great place to live. And in comparison to the rest of the country, Moscow is incredibly clean. And that's the third benefit to living here in the center. The fourth reason, the fourth pro for living in the center is the vast choice of apartment styles. Moscow has a lot of history, but it's also growing. Here in the center, you can find buildings from the 1800s, pre-revolution buildings, you can find Soviet buildings, and you can find brand new glass skyscrapers. So you have really a huge choice if you want to come live in the center. You can live in a pre-revolution 1800s brick building. You can live in a Soviet style apartment tower block, or you can live in a brand new condo complex, state of the art, with beautiful huge glass windows and amazing view over the city. There's something for different budgets. As long as your budget is not too small, you can have a wide range of choice, a vast array of options here in the center. If you leave the center, you just don't have that choice. Almost all of the buildings are Soviet style tower blocks, a type of building we call Khrushchev Camp, named after Khrushchev, the leader who built them. 5-story buildings with no lift. These are very common outside the center. They've all been knocked down in the center because of their low quality of build. But unfortunately, if you live outside the center, you're going to find lots of those. You're not going to find the new buildings. You're not going to find the really beautiful pre-revolution buildings. And that's another benefit of living in the center, just a vast range of choice of places to live. The fifth reason is something which has never been important for me, and is probably not going to be that important for expats, but it is very important for Russians, and that is prestige. Many Russian people, many Muscovites, dream of the ability to live in the center. It's very expensive to live here, and many of them will just never have the opportunity. So if someone says to you, where do you live, and you give the name of a metro station in the center, it will impress people. It does have some prestige. If you name a street which everyone's heard of, you're going to have some prestige. If you're chatting up a girl in a bar and she says, where do you live? And you give the name of, I don't know, Tverskaya, she's going to say, wow, you live in the center. It's really something which Russian people care about a lot more than expats. So if prestige is something that you care about, then living in the center is definitely a way to get that sort of prestige. It's something we call in Russian panty, which means people who show off, they always show off who they are, where they live. So if you want to brag, you want to talk about where you live, you got to live in the center. Now I've talked about the pros, I've got a couple of cons I like to highlight. These are pretty big for some people, so even though there's more pros, maybe these cons will just be a little bit too much for you. So the first con is traffic. The traffic in Moscow is horrendously bad in rush hour and often times during the day, even during the working day. If you want to go anywhere, you should look how long it takes to get there and add 10 or 20 minutes onto your ride just to make sure you're not going to be late. And it's not only the traffic, it's also the side effects of this. If you're looking to park somewhere, the parking capacity is very small and it is very expensive. You'll be driving around forever to find a place to park, only to park and have a look at the meter and see it's very expensive, much more expensive than you expected. And on top of that, if you don't speak Russian, it can be very complicated to understand what exactly you have to do, how you can pay. Maybe you should download the app and pay on the app. What's the number of this area? It's very complicated for people who don't speak Russian. So you can make an innocent mistake, you can try your best, do what you thought was the correct thing to do, and you can come back a little bit later and find your car has been towed away. So that's another problem linked to traffic, but there's also another, of course, and that is noise pollution. If you live in the center, you will never have a quiet moment. It's never going to be silent. Maybe you find a gem of a property where the noise is low, but for a vast majority of people, you're going to be living next to a busy road. It's going to be constant noise. Now that is not a problem for me. I quite like the sound of life being constantly there around me, but for many people, they hate it. So if you really want to have a place which is really quiet during the night, you definitely don't live in the center, and that will be a massive con for you. So that's the first con, first one of two, traffic. The second con of living in the center, and perhaps the most obvious and the most important one, is money, the price of everything. The price of apartments in Moscow compared to the outskirts is astronomical. Here, if you want to live maybe around this area inside the garden ring, you're looking at paying about 100,000 rubles a month for something of any decent quality. If you're looking to live outside the garden ring but within the third ring, which I would still call the center, you're looking at paying at least 50,000 rubles a month unless you want to live in a crappy apartment or just rent a room. Unfortunately, there are many unscrupulous landlords here, there are many bad apartments, and you'll see, oh, that looks like a bargain. But if it's going to be for less than 50,000 a month, you will be disappointed, things will go wrong. So this is a really big problem for many people. It's just the sheer price of things. Now, on top of that, it's not only the price of the apartment, it's the price of absolutely anything. If you need to go to the market to buy some fresh food, fresh fruit, it's more expensive than the outskirts. If you need to go to the doctors to pick up something, it's going to be more expensive. If you need your suit to be dry cleaned, it's going to be more expensive. Everything here in the center, the car wash, more expensive. Everything is more expensive. So when you're living on the outskirts, you can save a hell of a lot of money if you don't mind the long commute. But if you're living in the center, yes, you get the convenience, you get the lifestyle, but you're going to lose a hell of a lot of money. You're trading convenience for your wallet. So maybe that's something you do want to do, maybe that's something you don't want to do, but that's one thing to consider. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope I answered some of the questions you've asked me about living here in Moscow. I've been sat on the grass here having a wonderful time in this beautiful sun, and I just want to say, if you enjoyed this video, if it was helpful for you, please give me a thumbs up. Click it down below, it really helps me out. If you have some comments about what I've said, maybe you have some more questions, please type them down below. And if you'd like to see more videos about living in Moscow, about life in Moscow, about my personal life, maybe you want to see some videos about other cities in Russia, or just in general, other things about living in the biggest country in the world, please give me a subscription. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.